27th, 2024. The meeting will now come to order at 9 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carr,
Here.
Austin,
Here.
Here.
Hayden,
Here.
Baum,
Here.
Shepherd,
Here.
Cheers, thank you.
Here.
Commissioner Welch.
Here.
All present. So item number 4 on our agenda is public input. Input of citizens on matters concerning only the City of Cape Coral CRA are welcome to come to the microphone to speak. Do we have anyone wishing to speak this morning? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5, business. 5A is South Cape Downtown Redevelopment Plan Update. Turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we concluded our session last Thursday, we had to basically review the short-term project lists and the intermediate short-term or mid to long-term project list. Staff has completed that work over the past couple of days. They are on pages 62, 63, and 64 of the document. If you would like, we can go through those. If you've had a chance to look at them and you would like to make any comments or amendments, add or tweak some language, we'll be open to that. If not, we can move forward with approving this document and transmitting it through the appropriate process.
Commissioner Carr.
Thank you. I've gone through it. I haven't gone through it as well as I probably could have, but the bike laning or single laning of Country Club in the CRA, or is that part of this plan, or should it be?
Mike, as I recall, the bike laning on Country Club would line up well with the project we identified on the work plan as the
Multimodal couplet at Country Club in Palm Tree. It's on page 64 in section 12.2.4 under transportation. It's the first item.
that's the one.
Okay, so the description obviously didn't clue me into the bike lane. That's what that couplet, what is that? Can you explain that a little further?
A couplet is a pair of roadways that will work in tandem together.
Okay.
Then the multimodal is, bike lanes, pedestrians, low-speed vehicles, multi-use paths.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Gunter.
Thank you. When you talk about short-term and midterm and long-term capital projects, one thing that I saw that wasn't noted in here specifically was, or if it was noted, it wasn't a high priority as far as any type of parking structure in the CRA area. I know there's several lots that are city-owned lots that are identified in the plan, but I didn't see anything in there having a high priority for any type of parking structures. And we all know that we're very limited on space now. And I think that one thing that we have to make sure that we do, and not only making parking structures a high priority, but also evaluating the parking that we do have there and trying to maximize the use that we do have. And an example of that would be very similar to the one street that we just did, the angular parking where we picked up some parking spots. I think we need to try to evaluate what we have there now for on-street parking and try to maximize that. And then also at least explore some opportunities that may be out there for some type of a future parking structure. And I didn't see that really listed as a high priority. And I think that's something that should be a high priority for us because, you know, there's not enough parking down there as it exists today. And as we can see down there, the growth is continuing. So that problem's only going to compound over time. That's all I have.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think so in the entertainment district, we had the first item there, which was a centralized multi-use entertainment structure. We can expand upon that a little bit more and put with structured parking. And then we did have in Market Square, adaptive reuse or redevelopment parking lots and adjacent parking lots. Remember any others that we had or any other ones we can enhance to?
We could certainly just add in the transportation section, additional, new/additional structured parking.
Yeah, maybe with the, which you have listed under Market Square, you have that as a medium priority. I mean, to me, that's pretty simple, you know, to take a look at the, what we have available now, possibly restriping, doing some additional angular parking throughout the whole CRA area. But since that's a very minimal cost, we have some of those parallel parking spots there now. Maybe make that a high priority because since it is a very minimal cost, if we can expand or add some additional parking spaces as a result, I think that would only be a benefit. That's all I have.
Commissioner Cosden?
Thank you. This might be trivial, but how are we defining short-term versus mid to long-term? Because there's something under short-term that I think maybe should be long-term. Under Cape Coral Parkway, on page 63, it says mid-block pedestrian crossing or sky bridge, high priority. And it doesn't seem like that would be a short-term project, either of those things. I could be wrong, but they both seem more like a long-term project.
Generally, what we look to do is have in the 5-year capital asset plan, we would consider that short-term, mid to long-term, or intermediate to long-term would be anything beyond the 5-year capital asset improvement plan.
Do you really see either of those things happening in the next 5 years?
We were kind of thinking about the one that's going to be happening with the bridge. It may be located just inside of the CRA, depending on the exact placement. And we know that we are going to be looking at providing the aesthetics to that structure, so it's not just a basic bridge.
I did not
It's
realize.
listed on Cape Coral Parkway General, so if you have, we can always drop another one of those in the intermediate to long term, but we are thinking about opportunities with the one at the base of the bridge. We are also looking at some other mid-block crossings that have been contemplated for many years, kind of in that first link between Vincennes and Del Prado. At some point, looking at ways to get traffic across there. We can put it in both.
It's not that. I just wanted to make sure we had it in the right place. I didn't realize that the bridge, by the bridge, the pedestrian bridge, would be considered part of this plan. Thank you.
It's going to depend on placement, if it's inside the CRA district or just outside.
Commissioner Gunter?
Thank you. Just to piggyback on Commissioner Cosden's comments, I think there should be something listed for mid to long term, and the reason for that is at some point in time, when you take a look at the Bimini West project and any future Bimini East redevelopment, at some point, I think we're going to have to explore some type of a pedestrian crossover in that area for that connectivity between that and the downtown area. So the pedestrians could, maybe a pedestrian bridge or something. So I can see that as a possibility for mid to long term. So that may be something that we want to make sure that we note. And if we keep the other crossover in the short term because of the Cape Coral Bridge, maybe we can identify that a little more specifically for the short term, and then other mid-block crossings, pedestrian crossings, you know, whether it's in the area that you talked about on Vincennes or a little further down where the Bimini project is, to try to have that connectivity. You know, looking out 20 years, what I kind of envision, of course, none of us will be here for the next 20 years and somebody else will be making the decisions, but looking at, for me today, you know, I see the 47th Streetscape project continuing down from Coronado and 47th down to Palm Tree at some point, and then at some time having a crossover down on that area to try to connect the Bimini East and West projects, whatever they may be, to the downtown Cape area. I think that's going to be important for the success of the whole area down there. But I see that more as a mid to long-term goals.
I guess I'll chime in without any lights. We had talked about in that same area where there would, with the thought of making, you know, some type of a faux bridge, if you would, with the waterway coming through, both, you know, for aesthetics and all the advantages water-wise that we spoke of there. And I had asked the question as whether we were talking about it being an actual bridge, and it was more of the faux bridge like they did on the Fort Myers side in the River District. The part of my question of the bridge going over was to allow for that pedestrian and bike traffic that would then go under. So I would concur to have some type of a safe passage from each side with the development that's going to happen, you know, like it's already been said with Bimini, the Bimini Square project, and then with the thoughts of the future for Bimini East, and making the CRA more accessible without the concern for that Cape Coral Parkway crossing, I think should be a relatively high priority if we're gonna continue to focus on making each side of that road better. I think we need to have safe passage. So I would agree that we need to have some type of connectivity at that end of that project for sure. Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to repeat what was already said, but I envision multiple crossovers, bridges for citizens to go to each side of the parkway, because I believe with the growth of the city and it being a main artery, we're not going to be able to slow down the traffic as much as we probably even do today. We're going to have to keep it flowing as much as possible, so we're going to need a way for citizens to get from one side to the other.
Commissioner Gunter.
Thank you. And just another example as well, you know, if you take a look at the CRA, I mean, you have a major thoroughfare that just splits right through it, you know, so it definitely causes some complexities when you're trying to develop that particular area. And I think the goal, you know, you look at Miramar, you look at Lafayette Street, you know, trying to tie that in with the downtown area. You look at Bimini project, so, you know, having that accessibility, a safe passage for pedestrians, so we can connect those elements, those islands basically, to try to bring the downtown all together. I think that's going to be extremely important in the planning for the success. I think that is a key element to have that complete downtown area successful, is going to be connectivity. And we have to make sure that we plan that accordingly, because if not, we're going to have little islands down there where people aren't going to walk to. You know, if you have a family with 3 kids, they don't want to go across Cape Coral Parkway. We did it the other day in our little walk to go to lunch, and it's a little hectic. So I think That's very important to have that connectivity with all of the nodes down there, so that whole area to be successful. And we have to make sure that we plan that properly for the success.
Anyone else? I would just ask one question as well as it relates to that connectivity. And we had talked at one time, and I'm looking on page, let's see, 63, where we talked about Market Square and the thought of going vertical with parking there. Is that still a consideration? And where would that fall in this plan? Because as I look at Market Square, it's only under short-term capital projects. My guess is that's probably more of a mid-range, but that's just a guess. But I don't see it then showing up in the mid to long term, because there is no Market Square in that area.
Speaking candidly, I don't think there's enough funds coming into the CRA yet to accomplish everything we have in the short term. But we've identified those as short term because these are the projects that, as money comes in, we would like to fund to move forward with. The adaptive reuse or redevelopment of parking lots there would be partnerships with the private sector. So it's likely that half of these may end up may not even be funded in the first 5 years. Some of these may just be carryovers that stay there.
So is there anyone else on the commission that thinks that at least should be listed in the mid to long term then, with the thought of having that Miramar and Lafayette? If the people are parking on that side, it certainly would encourage people to use the businesses and whatever entertainment finds itself on the south side of Cape Coral Parkway. Certainly if there was parking there, it would encourage that. And so while it wouldn't be short-term, it wouldn't necessarily be all funded by the CRA, even if it's a public enterprise that does it, should it still be on our scope, that would be something for, that would be part of our plan in the mid to long term. Yeah, but there's, in that Market Square area of short term, the parking, the vertical parking that we talked about having there is not there. That's fair, not having the money. But for the mid to long term, do we want that on the scope, if you will, in the plan, that we would want to do that in the mid to long term as a part of this plan in that Market Square area of the CRA? Because there's nothing in the plan in mid to long term for Market Square specifically. Commissioner Shepard.
Yes, I don't know the answer, so I'm bringing this up for staff. Is there ways for us to make it advantageous for future development to, when they build their project, to make a sky bridge part of their project, which would help bring them customers, commerce, but maybe even link them to another project on the other side of Cape Coral Parkway where it benefits both parties. If there's anything we can implement that, like I said, makes that advantageous to them, we can create paths where we don't always have to pay for everything. We can put visions out there and offer opportunities for fulfilling that vision to the developers. Like when I mentioned the trash, when we talked about the trash, we want to create ways of getting these future developers to implement, our visions. So just keep that in mind, that we don't have to pay for everything if there are ways that we can incentivize how we want the downtown to build out. So if they know that opportunity exists, they might design it in their project. That's it.
Noted. Commissioner Gunter?
Yeah, and on that note as well, I mean, even if you take a look And I'm sure many of us have been in many other cities that saw something very similar, but you take the Cove project, for instance, and even if they didn't want to, pay for the whole pedestrian bridge, we could have had possibly, in hindsight, looking back, some type of an agreement with them where we provided, say you're on the second floor, there's a restaurant there or some type of accessibility publicly in that facility. We could have done a pedestrian bridge connected to their structure and had a pedestrian bridge across Cape Coral Parkway. So that would have been an excellent spot to have some type of, when you take a look at the CRA that's almost in the middle, we could have possibly done something similar to that. So I think, I would say that, with your question, I think it should be at least added as a mid to long term. I know we had another project in that particular area that our city manager had a discussion, and one of the elements of that project was public parking. So I think it would be important to at least have that as a mid to long term project. That way, if another developer or this developer, whomever it may be, want to develop that area and we have a P3 agreement with them, at least we have it in our plan as a mid to long term project. So I would be okay with adding that either in short term or mid to long term. I think it needs to be identified, structural parking at that particular location, and then, see where it leads us from there. Can't hurt to add it.
Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, that's what I
ACE project, the medical facility that's going to be implemented there in the future. Who knows? There could be a parking structure across the street that a lot of the people going for their services, instead of them standing in line at a traffic light to cross over, how much of a benefit it would be. So just like Commissioner Gunter said, we should do whatever we can to developers and
Commissioner Carr.
Yeah, just to go back to the pedestrian bridges for a second, like you said, we do travel to other cities and we see what's available there for crossing and roads similar to ours. I think, the safety element, obviously, people, when they cross at mid-block, it's not the appropriate thing to do, right? I mean, that's obvious. We've all seen it happen. It's dangerous. I think, the distance between the blocks is not significant. I mean, I don't even know if putting a pedestrian bridge would be possible in the most, the perfect location for a pedestrian bridge. I don't know if it would even work, from an engineering standpoint. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but just knowing the area a little bit, walking to the next block to cross at the intersection with the crosswalk and the light, I think is the better way to go. I mean, financially, obviously. Pedestrian bridges, they could be good, but I don't know. I'm not even sure that they're appropriate in that concentrated downtown area across Cape Coral Parkway. From a feasibility standpoint, that might help us. I mean, the discussion's good. I think the ideas are good, but logistically, I think a lot of times people just don't know where they're going. I've helped people get to where they want to be downtown by saying, go to that next light, when they were going the opposite direction. I think that's part of it. So, I don't know. I just wonder if it's even possible to consider these pedestrian bridges at the location I think we're considering, which would be, mid-block, Vincennes to, Vincennes to Southeast 15th Avenue in that area. Is it even possible to put a pedestrian bridge there in mid-block? Because you wouldn't want to put it close to either intersection because it doesn't make any sense. You could just go to the intersection. So I just wonder if it's a cost prohibitive thing that may not give us what we're looking for, from a return, to the investment side. So just wanted to put that out for some thought, and whether it's even possible to do what we're talking about in that particular area. Thank you.
I would, I would just share that for me, it's more of a looking forward to new problems that will be created in safety with the three laning of Cape Coral Parkway. And certainly while a crosswalk, all the safeties possible are placed into a crosswalk, we're going to be increasing traffic that needs to obey those rules, which not everybody does. Cape Coral Parkway is a major east-west, connector. People coming from Fort Myers into Cape Coral to Fort Myers, and as we in the CRA build greater enticements to cross that road, which is basically what we're talking about with both Bimini Square and then the potential redevelopment of Bimini East, trying to revitalize the Lafayette and Miramar area so that we, if you will, duplicate Southeast 47th on the south side as we make the enticements to cross that road greater, and as we enable greater traffic to run on that road. Where those two collide is where we may want to consider something outside of the normal crosswalk, if it's possible. Obviously, having the room to do it and to have an ADA and all the rest that goes along with it obviously is an engineering issue. But to not consider it, I think is a mistake. Just my opinion. Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, I think what I'm envisioning is not just pedestrian bridges for Cape Coral Parkway, but I'm considering it like they do a lot of airports, where you can literally walk the entire downtown area and go from project to project with all elevated walks, just like we have here. From this council chambers, we have an elevated bridge to get to the other building, where traffic flows underneath, because I believe as the density is increased, we're not going to be able to stop the traffic. It's going to have to be a constant flow. So just like Commissioner Gunther said, you could be at a restaurant on one side of the street and actually walk across one of these bridges like we have right here in this building and actually go shopping on the other side of the street or to another complex. So if we could let developers know that's what we're looking for. It doesn't necessarily have to mean them bridges will be on Cape Coral Parkway. It might be throughout. It's a way to connect all the different commerce where people never have to go down the street. Because I'll be totally honest with you, if we had the typical crossover like we see, where you have to go up 2 stories of steps to cross the street and then 2 stories of steps going down, I will be the first to tell you, Commissioner Carr, that I would rather just walk across the street when the light changes rather than do all that work. So that's not what I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning like what we have here at City Hall, bridges that connect the commerce from street to street, so that the people aren't waiting for traffic or having to cross a busy street. Because what I'm envisioning is with the build out of the city, it's a main artery. I believe that a lot of the intersections are going to disappear with development, and we're going to want the traffic to constantly move and not be stopped. So I'm looking for a way, like Commissioner Gunther said, for the people to just cross all over, but not just on Cape Coral Parkway, throughout the downtown.
Commissioner Hayden.
Yeah, I think the challenges that the downtowns faced in the past was we kind of had 2 separate downtowns. We had the part that was north of the Parkway and south of the Parkway, and there was really never any clear way to get across, especially between the light at Del Prado to the next light. That's a pretty good distance there, and with the median there in the middle, it made it more difficult to cross. And now you have to factor in a 6-lane road through the middle of your downtown area, making it as safe as possible for pedestrians to cross and to connect the 2 sides. And as the downtown starts to evolve with what's going to happen to the west, I think it's going to be important now where really develop a vision and a plan that includes pedestrian bridges if they can be utilized, mid-block crossings. All that has to go into, the word connectivity was used, and I think that's important to the heartbeat of the downtown to make sure that happens. So I think we have to look at all ways that keeps pedestrians flowing, keeps them safe, and if it works into the mid or long-term plan, that's great. Probably in that category somewhere. That can be a pretty wide range, mid to long, depending on how we're defining it by years. I'm not sure, how we're looking at that. Obviously, the Cape Coral Bridge is several years away yet, but you have to factor in the pedestrian bridges now when you go to a 6-lane road, because mid-block crossings will be a little bit more challenging and a little bit more difficult. So I don't see any reason not to include it as part of the plan. If it works out, great. We know we're going to have a parking structure at the Bimini Place project too, that's going to have public parking spaces available as well. We haven't really talked about that as much as we have about the Cove. So, I think, making that downtown area work as efficiently as possible for walkability, for bikes, will bring us to a point where the downtown becomes a destination like it is in Fort Myers, or like it might be in Sarasota, or like it might be in other places in Florida. Thanks.
Seeing a new entrant, I'm going to go to Commissioner Welch and then back to Commissioner Gunter.
Thank you. I don't see a problem in putting it in the plan, knowing that the plan is the heartbeat of what comes in the future. So mid to long term, adding pedestrian crossings and potentially another parking garage, I could totally support. We're not saying yes, we're doing this next week, and we're not binding ourselves to it. But if it's not in the plan, then we can't do it. So why not add it? I see no harm. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Gunter?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, I disagree with Commissioner Carr. I think it's something that's, for me, two things at the very top of the list for the CRA to be successful is parking. How many times have we went somewhere? I can tell you, I went to the yacht club to go down there. Drove around 3 times, couldn't find parking, so I left and went somewhere else. People are going to do that in the CRA if we don't have ample parking. I'm looking at the CRA the next 20 years. That's kind of what I'm basing my decisions on. It's up and growing. We want it to be a vital and vibrant area for our community. So we have to make sure that we put the infrastructure. A pedestrian bridge for me is infrastructure. You got to make sure we put the infrastructure in place, not only for the connectivity between the north and the south with the 6 lanes that Commissioner Hayden had mentioned, but the safety element. I'm sure there's some funding opportunities that may be out there that we could explore to help because of pedestrian safety that we may be able to utilize. You take a look at Google Earth. I was looking at Google Earth while we're sitting here talking. There's 3 lots just west of Coronado Parkway that are open and undeveloped. There's a lot directly across from the Cove that is unapproved, right next to Fix Marine. So when you look at these limited amount of unimproved properties that are adjacent to Cape Coral Parkway, and of course, you got to look at both sides of the road because it's a pedestrian bridge. There are limited areas that could probably be utilized today that I think we would do ourselves a disservice if we didn't at least add it to the plan. I even think we need to take it one step further and have staff try to determine where some good locations would be. Because what happens if one of these properties come up for sale, next year? And it's a bit identified as that's a good location for a pedestrian bridge, then I would be inclined for the CRA to possibly purchase that property with that long-term vision that we have to have the pedestrian connectivity. Again, I think the 2 things for success is parking and connectivity. They should be our 2 priorities. What type of infrastructure we have to put in for that is to be determined. But I think for me personally, to try to bring this whole area, and I know Council or Commissioner Carr had mentioned, you know, he wanted to incorporate the golf course as a district. That's the same thing. We got to have that connectivity, some type of a walking pedestrian path from the downtown area to that area as well. When you look at all the sub-districts that we've identified, we got to bring all those together under one umbrella with connectivity. I think that's very important. And with a 6-lane road, we have no other choice to either have a pedestrian bridge overhead or one down below. So we got to have one of those for pedestrian safety and connectivity. So I think it's extremely important to put it in the plan.
Commissioner Carr?
Yeah, just want to make sure my comments were clear. I don't necessarily disagree with the bridge idea or the pedestrian bridge idea. Just the locations of them, I think, are, I think ruling out locations that are impossible, at least today, it would be not a bad discussion. But I think, you know, to have them in places, and again, I have no idea what they cost, right? If they're not that expensive, which I have no concept of what they would cost to construct, I just say, you know, accessibility and free flow of pedestrian traffic is extremely important with safety and all the things that we're talking about and opening up the entire area downtown. That's growing every day, as we see. I just want it to make sense, I guess. When you're looking at mid-block on some of these smaller blocks, in locations that don't have any access today with vacant land and whatnot, I just want to make sure, I just want to make sure that we're not talking about those locations, I guess. Places that we're developing now, Bimini East, Bimini West, crossing the Parkway with 6 lanes, it may be appropriate there, moving forward. And like you said, we're looking long-term, 20 years out, right? But today, the traffic that we're seeing, pedestrian traffic, is more focused in a more concentrated area that I don't know is conducive for a pedestrian bridge, is what I was more referring to. So I'm not opposed to pedestrian bridges. I think it should be in the plan, because I know if it's not in the plan, we can't even do it. I'm just wondering, locations moving forward, the duration, when are we talking about putting them forward? That kind of thing is more the thoughts I was having, not necessarily opposed to it, just the discussion about where, I think, is critically important as we look at it, just for the, if it's between a block and a small block, I just don't know if it makes sense. 6 lanes, it's going to be, the speed, I think, is something that could be discussed moving forward for safety. I mean, if you look, even in Fort Myers, they've got a state road now that has crosswalks mid-block. Now, I didn't think that would be feasible, but they've done it, and I don't know how it's going with the success of that, but there's significant lighting changes and so forth, but, that's a high-speed state road, really, that they put new crosswalks that I didn't even know would exist. So there may be other ideas that we could consider as well that might be less expensive and less difficult to accomplish, but I'm not opposed to pedestrian bridges. I want to make sure I'm clear about that. I just want to have more discussion about where they would be located, and the feasibility of where they could go moving forward. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
What state road is that, sir? Just for curiosity.
45, State Road 45, US 41.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cleveland Avenue, whatever.
It would sound like we have a general consensus that pedestrian crossover and parking structure should be in the plan mid to long term. Okay, good enough. Excellent. Mr. Executive Director, do we have anything further for staff presentation to the agency today?
Do we have anything else?
If we'd like, we could work through the document and look at anything that is highlighted in yellow, provided you've already had an opportunity to look over the document and had no objections to that language. I see no need to use your time for that. Note that in the next version of the document, things that are in yellow will become green, signifying that that language is ready to move into the final version of the plan. So if you want to line by line it and look at those, I'd be glad to discuss them with you. And otherwise, we can proceed. I envision the next version of this document, I'll have the graphics and the maps updated for you. And the new section on the golf course area yet to be named, and fill in some of those holes, then present this to the Planning and Zoning Commission would be the next stop after getting your final blessings.
Is there anyone on the commission that would like a line-by-line review right now, or would you prefer that all the changes get made and the new maps get put in place for review at our next regularly scheduled meeting? All right, looks like general consensus is that we'll have you go ahead and make all the changes that you have in mind.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for working staff and having this prepared for us. Brings us to item 6 in our agenda, which is time and place of next meeting. Next meeting will be held on Wednesday, May 8th, 2024 at 9 a.m. here in council chambers. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Any objection? Unanimously approved. This meeting is adjourned.